Okay, we will call this meeting to order. It's 3 p.m. for April 22nd, the regular council meeting, and I'll please ask Councillor Wing to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit who have lived on and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to 2.1. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, can I please have someone make a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented?
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maceras. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll move on to 3.1, regular council meeting of April the 8th. Please have somebody make a motion.
I'll move those minutes,
Okay.
Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion? All in favor? Okay, carried. And then 3.2, the agenda and priorities meeting for April the 15th.
I'll move those minutes, Mayor Barclay.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, we'll move into 4.1 and the audited financial statements. I'll just ask Director Vickers to introduce our guest today.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barclay. So the town has employed the firm of BDO to conduct our annual audit of the town's finances. The 2023 audited financial statements have been completed. The audited financial statements and financial information returns do have to be submitted to municipal affairs by May 1st each year. The audit was performed on site between March 19th and 20th, with other work being completed remotely. BDO, we have Mitchell Kennedy here from BDO. He's our accounting manager with BDO, and he is here to present the statements and answer any questions that council may have.
Right, thank you. Okay, please come on up, Mitchell, and turn the mic on, please. Welcome.
There we go. Everybody, nice to be here again. I'll go through this set of financial statements for you, so if any point you guys have any questions, please feel free to stop me. We can go over what's currently bugging you. So we can start with the auditor's report, which is the next page. So this has been an interesting year for municipalities. There's been one significant impact, but two changes to the public sector accounting world. The first one is the introduction to standard 3280, which is your asset retirement obligation standard. And then the other one is the 3450, which is your financial instrument standard. So on the financial instrument side of things, it hasn't really changed much for the municipality. It's just additional note disclosures that are required as to the new change for 3450. But to run you through the audit report here, we have audited the consolidated financial statements here in front of you. There is a qualification on these financial statements, and so when I use the term qualification, it means we had a limitation specifically related to asset retirement obligations. This has been a pretty common qualification that a lot of municipalities are seeing this year, and the reason why this qualification exists is because a lot of municipalities are still undergoing a lot of work to identify what their actual asset retirement obligations are. And I know Erica is going through the process of trying to pinpoint what your guys' estimated exposure or liability that should be surrounding the asset retirement obligation. It's a pretty complicated thing, and it usually involves engineers to help out with the assessments and trying to determine where the legal obligation actually falls. So to reiterate, there is a qualification here. It's basically saying that these financial statements are free from material misstatement, although there is that limitation surrounding the asset retirement obligation. Okay. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements in front of you. In preparing these consolidated financial statements, management is responsible for assessing the group's ability to continue operating as a going concern. Our objective as auditors are to obtain reasonable assurance that these financial statements are free from material misstatement. And then if we could have you go to the statement of financial position. I'm going to do a high-level comparative from your current year to your prior year to highlight some of the major differences in the year. You'll have to remember that this is a snapshot as at December 31st, 2023. And so just quickly going down, you have a significant jump of about $5 million in your cash. I'll go through that in more details when I get to the statement of cash flow. Going further down, your accounts receivable is down a little bit from last year. That's your accounts receivable balance is made up mainly of utilities and grants receivable that you will be receiving in the near future. And then going further down to your liabilities, you'll see that you have new debt in the year of $5.5 million. That's causing the significant change to your net financial assets. So your net financial assets is just taking your financial assets minus your liabilities is getting you that 11.8 million, which is a little bit down from last year at 13 million. And that the main attributor there is the long-term debt that you've received. And then there's your non-financial assets. So your big balance there is your TCA. You had capital asset additions of about $7.2 million in the year. And then you had disposals of about $3 million, and then the rest is attributed to your amortization in the year. And so your ending accumulated surplus is going to be about $115 million. Okay, the next page, statement of operations. So here I do another high-level analytic. When I do this, I like to compare what you guys had budgeted in the year versus what actually happened. If there's any differences in the year between what was budgeted versus what actually happened, I'll take a look at last year and see if it's relatively consistent to what happened in the prior year. So in 2023, you guys had budgeted about $23 million in operating revenue. Your actual operating revenue for the year was about 23.7. So you have about a $700,000 difference there. That's mainly attributed due to your investment income in the year. So you received an extra $300,000 approximately in more investment income. And then there's your other category. So your other category is going to be made up of fire service revenue and land rentals that you have with your land that you guys own. And then going further down on your expenditures, same thing. You budgeted $24.2 million in the year. Your actual expenditures are 25.8. So the main contributing factors there is going to be your protection services are up a little bit. That's mainly related to contract services and wages. And then you're going to see quite a big jump in your transportation. That's only because you have your amortization that's currently sitting there in your expense. And so your amortization isn't technically budgeted for, which is somewhat reasonable because it's not a cash related item. But under the MGA, you're required to theoretically budget for amortization, although a lot of municipalities do not. But that's effectively what's causing your big swing in your expenditures for the year. So your total expenditures is 25.8, and that's mainly literally causing because of your transportation services. And then going further down, your government transfers for capital, that's just your capital grant revenue that you recognized in the year. So you had expected to recognize 1.3, but you only actually recognized $980,000 in the year. So your excess of revenue over expenditures is in a deficit of 1.1 million. So your accumulated surplus at the beginning of the year dropped by that $1.1 million. Okay, if you want to go to next page over, statement of cash flow. So this is to highlight your movement in cash in the year. So your starting point is going to be from your income statement, which is that deficit of $1.1 million. And then you add back the non-cash items that were sitting in your income statement. So to reiterate your big swing in your budgeted versus actual expenses, your amortization for the year was about $4.3 million. And then part of your disposals, which is your net loss in your disposals of TCA, is $2 million. And then moving through your change in non-cash operating balances. So these are going to be fluctuations in your balance sheet. Basically, if you just look at your comparatives for 23 to your 22, these are the changes in your balance sheet items. So your taxes receivable changed by 107,000 from last year. Your big one's accounts receivable. That's because you have less AR in the year, therefore you have an increase in cash. And then your other big one is going to be your inventory for consumption of 500,000. And then going back down to your capital transactions, there's the 7.2 million that you had in capital asset additions in the year. And then you had a change in your restricted cash balances of 1 million, and then the proceeds that you received on your long-term debt of the 5.5 million to move your cash at the beginning of the year from 11.6 to 17.8 million. And of that $17.8 million, 115 of that is currently sitting in your deferred revenue as restricted cash. Okay. If you want to go next page over. So there's a new significant accounting policy just at the very top. This is just to highlight your 3450. It doesn't change any risk exposure or anything for the municipality. It's just so you know, reader information that explains kind of how your balance sheet items are currently presented on your financial statements. I won't go into too much detail about it, but effectively most of your stuff is being either recorded at cost or amortized cost. Okay, and then if we can go 2 more pages over. I'm not going to go through the entire thing here, but there's the new significant accounting policy for your asset retirement obligations. It shows you effectively what the standard is supposed to be doing and how it's to be accounted for. But to reiterate on the qualification, there is no ARO currently assessed or recorded on your balance sheet. But that's the new accounting policy that was introduced in 2023. Okay.
Mitchell, may I interrupt you?
Of course.
Can you go into that a little bit more? Like, what's the purpose behind this? And give me an example.
Of an asset retirement obligation? So I'll use the most common example. Let's say you have a building that was built in 1970s, and that building that you have has asbestos in it. Theoretically, there's a retirement obligation that, let's say, end of life, you're going to have to do something with that asbestos in that building. And so in order to deal with it, there's going to be a financial cost that's associated to it. That liability that you have related to your capital assets is not currently disclosed on your financial statements. And this is pretty common this year for a lot of municipalities because everyone's trying to pinpoint and identify what that liability is. It's quite complicated, and the thing is you have to go through your entire TCA policy and your TCA listing and identify what's considered at risk and what's not. And once you identify something that's potentially at risk, whether it's a super old building or you just don't have enough information related to that TCA, you might have to do things like environmental study assessments or environmental site assessments to figure out whether or not you have something there, or maybe you need an inspector to go in to figure out, okay, what are we looking at from a potential future obligation that we have to deal with. And then there's more complexities to it on the recognition side, trying to determine who the legal liability truly falls onto. One of the more complicated areas that we've seen this year is lease agreements. So we've seen municipalities that have lease agreements with commissions, and you'd think as an owner of the TCA that the liability would fall on them, but then we would later find out that the liability technically falls with the leasee and not necessarily the leaseor. So it's effectively a big project which requires a lot of complexity and of the municipalities that have got it past the finish line. They're dealing with multiple engineers and even contracting this work out to effectively isolate what the problem is. So it's a new standard this year. It's a big one.
What's the purpose behind it ultimately?
To help you balance your future projected cash flows and trying to keep in mind with your reserves and operational activities that, hey, we're going to have this potential liability that we're going to need to deal with later. We should make sure we budget for it so it's not this out of left field cost that's going to fall on the municipality where you guys are like, well, we didn't know we had this. So effectively what the government's trying to do is to make sure that municipalities are aware of potential liabilities that might come across your path.
And does age have anything to do with, or is it more so
So
things
that-
like asbestos or?
There's a lot of really, so I use asbestos because that's a really easy one to talk about. If you want to get into the complexities of it, 2018, I believe, was the year where it was federally banned for contractors to use asbestos in buildings. I think it was banned for municipalities to stop using it in 2016. But one of the hard rules that a lot of municipalities are following is basically if you have a building that was predated before 1991, there's a risk there that you might have a building that was effectively put together with asbestos. But as you go further out past 1991, less and less contractors stopped using asbestos. So your risk exposure about whether or not you have a liability there decreases as you go further out in time. It gets way more complicated when you start talking about landfills and you have pipes that are underground that might have asbestos, and then they're finding out that if you have asbestos in pipes in the ground and those pipes are considered not disturbed, theoretically there is no legal obligation you have to do with that. Unless you do disturb those pipes, then you do have a legal obligation. So that's just the surface of it. It gets quite
So
complicated.
Are landfills on the list?
Yeah, so-
Tell me more about that.
So landfills actually fell under 3270 last year, and that's what they were always under. So when you were doing a landfill liability calculation, it was based off of the capacity or utilization of that landfill. So in the 2023 year for municipalities, landfills are now part of 3280, so they get effectively rolled into the asset retirement obligation. And so you now no longer consider the utilization and capacity of a landfill. This is your liability. What does that liability look like 40, 50 years from now? And what are those 25 years of post-retirement costs going to look like? And basically figuring it out, okay, well, if we're doing it in 50 years, what's today's value? And then every year you have to accrete, which is record an expense to true up your liability. It's like a pie in the sky estimate. You're trying your best to figure out, okay, well, what is this liability? And as auditors, when we get numbers thrown at us, we have to go, okay, where is this number coming from? Is the person providing this number a specialist in this area? Like, how much reliance can we put on this number? So it's been a mountain of a task this year with all our engagements, trying to figure out how much work has the client done? Is it sufficient to get there? And it's really just a time thing. And instead of trying to rush things through and just throw a random arbitrary number up there, trying to pinpoint what the actual dollar value is. And so,
So once a landfill is closed and it's now being used for something else, does that still play into it? And
so if you have a landfill that's closed and you're assuming there's nothing like contaminations, which is 3260, we're not going to talk about that one.
why not?
Don't want to bore you guys. But,
Go for it. No?
but if you have a landfill that's done and retired and you just have the post-retirement costs, usually they're not significant in nature. I've seen it anywhere from like $25,000 to like $90,000 a year of post-retirement costs related to it. But the big upfront costs are usually the retirement and making sure the landfill's effectively, they use the term capped.
Yeah.
So capping off the landfill, and then after it's capped, you literally just monitor it for the 25 years. So does that help answer your question? Okay.
Can I ask a question now, please?
Of course.
Just for clarification.
Yeah.
Is our asset retirement obligation informed by our asset management work and the report that was subsequently prepared? So does all of the time and money that went into our asset management plan help to inform this process for you?
I'm going to defer to Erica.
Thanks.
Mayor Barkley, through to Councillor Wing, likely not. So this is just looking at our current assets, and when it comes time to dispose of that asset, what additional costs could be because of the hazardous nature of that asset. So it's not yes, we have to plan for roads and all that future aspect, but we're basing it all that we can just dispose of them all like normal. And if these pipes have asbestos in it when we dig it up, how much more is it going to cost us to dispose of the asbestos versus everything else, just like normal?
So, does the plan not point to some of those areas already? When they did the assessment of all of those all of the components of the report, did they not point to some of those aging facilities and aging infrastructure to say these are some of the concerns? I thought that they did.
So with linear assets, we do have an analysis of all of the linear infrastructure, which ones are like that. But when it came to the facilities, we did not do a hazardous look at those facilities. It was only just the standard maintenance, not the hazardous material. So that was a concern.
Okay. If we can go to note 1, which I believe is the next page. So I'll just go over some of the notes, the big ones anyways. So this is just to show what your cash is actually made up of. So you have cash of 15 million, which is just bearing interest at a prime less 1.75. Then you have your short-term deposits that are making up that 3 million. And then to reiterate, of that 17.8 million, you have 115,000 of that that's currently restricted because it's part of your deferred revenue and it's already has a purpose. And then I'm gonna go to note 7. So it's your long-term debt note. This is just a new note for you guys this year because you took out the debt. So these are the terms of the $5.5 million that you guys had taken out in the year. So it bears interest at 4.98%. You guys make annual payments of about $704,000 a year. That's made up of your principal amount of $436, and then your interest decreases as you pay off more principal. It's not saying at the end of 2028 you're going to have this massive $3 million payment. That's just when our timeline cuts off. We do a 5-year forward lookout. So next year that'll drop down by about $500,000, and then it'll say 2.5 million, but they're effectively annual payments of what you can expect for your cash outlay. And then if I could have you go to, let's say, note 13. This is kind of the last note that I wanted to cover with you guys. So this is effectively your equity. So in your equity is effectively your book value as a municipality, like where the value of your municipality is coming from accounting perspective. So you can see most of that is built up in your equity in TCA. So your equity in TCA is just a formula of taking your net book value of your capital assets and you subtract off your long-term debt of 5.5 million, and then it gets you your ending equity in TCA of 88.3 million. So your equity in TCA makes up approximately 80 to 90% of your total value as a municipality, and then you have your restricted surplus. So you currently have about $16.3 million set aside in reserves. And so the big story that I always say is, if you look at your balance sheet, I don't need you necessarily to go back, but you had financial assets of $12 million. If you take out the long portion of your liabilities, which is your debt of about $5 million, you have effectively about $17 million in financial assets that are liquid, which is telling me that your restricted reserves are currently funded for presently. So that's a good sign. And then you have unrestricted amounts of 10.8 that you could leave there. You could move it to reserves. You could do whatever you wanted to as a municipality. So, I'll talk about note 14, I guess, now too, since that's more relevant this year. So your total debt limit and your total debt servicing limit, those are set out by the MGA. So the way these formulas work is they're driven based off of your operating revenue. So if you take your total operating revenue and you multiply it by the formula of 1.5, you get your total debt limit. And your debt limit means this is the maximum amount of debt that you can take out as a municipality. So as your revenue changes, so too will your debt limit. So in this case, you had a total maximum debt limit of 35.2 million. You have total debt of about 5.5 million, which leaves you with a remaining debt limit of $29.7 million. And then there's your total debt servicing limit. Your debt servicing limit means this is the maximum amount of debt that you can service in a year. So you can currently service about $5.8 million in debt on an annual basis. Right now, on an annual basis, you guys are currently servicing $700,000, which leaves you with $5.2 million of remaining service limit for the year. So you can theoretically go above these limits, but in order to go above these limits, you need to get municipal affair approval in order to do so. And now I am done. So,
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Councillor Bates?
Yeah, and a couple that were actually prior to the asset discussion, so I didn't want to
yeah.
disturb it. And it could be that I need some help from admin. One was the transportation services that you mentioned, that it was a big swing. And I'm just wondering if somebody can give me an idea. Maybe we could go back and look at that, but it was a huge number, I thought. It wasn't what I thought we're spending on them. It was
Yeah.
big.
So I can talk about that again. So if you actually compare your current year amount of 6.6 million to your 5.6 million from last year, it's not super far off from the prior year. But if you try to compare it to your budget, you'll see that you have about 2.4 approximately budgeted for. You have to remember when we went through our statement of cash flow, you guys had amortization of about $4.3 million. And on your statement of operations, you report by function. And so you can't just throw amortization as a line item on your statement of operations. So it has to be rolled up into a specific function. And so because you guys don't budget for amortization, that's what's causing the significant swing on your transportation value.
I guess what I'm questioning is the millions versus, like, what do we do that we have millions on that line, on transportation services? It would be as if we had a bus fleet or.
Councillor Bates, are you inquiring just to what makes up that $2.4 million in transportation services? Is that what your question is?
Well, that or the 2023 number of.
If you want to look at your note 24, that'll kind of show you the reconciliation on the budget to show that you guys did do a balanced budget. So
I just want to know what is it that we have in transportation services other than two little mini buses that I'm aware of? What is it?
Yeah, Mitch, do you know what the breakdown is of that $2.4 million of where it came from? I think that's really what.
Yeah.
It's likely not in the same budget that we consider transportation. It could be items from all throughout our operating budget that flow into that line item to make up that number. It could be all of our fuel costs from across all of our departments going into there. We can get a proper breakdown of what
Yeah,
accounts.
and if we can't answer it today, that's
and-
fine. It
and I
just
can
caught my
provide
eye
that.
and it just makes me want to know what it is. And then the other one was the big swing in inventory for consumption as well. I don't know if it was we had a lot of stuff on hand after COVID, and then it was a big swing. It looked like a negative to a big positive.
So that consumption value is going to be mainly driven based off of your land held for resale.
Oh.
So if you look at your balance sheet, statement of financial position, one page back. Other way, please. It's the one before this, so if you just scroll up. Yeah, right there. So if you look at your land held for resale, the change is effectively that $500,000 from last year, which is that 10.2 to your 9.7. So it's a non-financial asset. That's what's causing the inventory for consumption.
Okay. Yeah, it was a different line that I saw that you were, because the previous year was negative, I thought. I'm not sure which.
Are
I
you
didn't
talking
write
about the
page.
statement of cash flow?
the line was inventory for consumption. I can't even follow this, it's going so fast.
Consolidated statements, cash flows. Page 6.
I didn't think it was that far back. Yeah.
Yeah, so the way this works is literally, it's a change. So if you look at last year's 705, that would have been a change from your 2022 land held for resale to your 2021 land held for resale. So unfortunately, we don't have the 21 comparatives on here, but those would have been what was illustrated in the last year set of financial statements.
Okay, no, I'm good there, because I wasn't thinking land.
Yeah, I
But,
got you.
Okay. Yeah, I'd still like to know what makes up the other one, and we can get that later. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So Director Vickers, did you just want a motion to accept?
Mayor Barkley, yes, please. I
Financial
actually have two motions looking for council's approval.
There, sorry, I don't have that sheet. Okay, we have somebody please make the first motion. Councillor Heistad.
Yep, the council approves the 2023 audited financial statements.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, carried. And somebody please make the second motion.
Mayor Barkley, I'll make the motion. The council approves the 2023 Alberta Financial Information Return.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. Thanks. Thank you, Mitchell.
Thanks for your time once again. Thanks, Todd, Sherry, Erica, you guys as well. You're all pleasant to talk to. So thank you.
Enjoy the asset retirement situation. Okay, we will move on to 4.2 and the Chief Administrative Officer report.
Thanks, Mayor Barkley. Hello, council. Just acknowledging BDO, Mitchell and his team, but also Erica's team and SLT for, again, other successful measures of sound operations. And if there's any further questions ongoing, please fire away. We'd be happy to get that information for you. So just going into the CAO report, just a few items for your attention. It's a little bit different report, just areas of focus for the last couple weeks and ongoing, one being the framework and priorities area. And again, next couple of weeks is really going to be a push on getting you a framework for consideration, but also finalizing, moving into your priority area. And one area that I have been working on is more in the recreation funding side. The one area on this report indicating had met with a recreation organization, expecting a follow-up call over the next week or so, just with any feedback and how council could potentially support an organization that has access to government for recreation funding. So a little bit of gaps in what I'm telling you, but a little bit of work still to happen prior to providing you full detail of what that looks like. The rest is there for your information. If there's any questions to this report or anything else, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. Could I please have someone make a motion? Councillor Maceros?
I move that council approves this CAO report dated April 22nd, 2024 as information.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, just a question on the funding gap piece, Todd. I'm not clear on that, and I apologize. Not trying to be rude. It just is that to assist us with any type of funding or any of our recreation in the future, or how does that work?
Yeah, just to Councillor Heistad, just taken from what I've heard of council, just in light of the LGFF, but also government's announcements in relation to funding of recreation facilities. We don't have a clear picture of the government program for the $30 million over 3 years. So yeah, just gathering information for council consideration in relation to recreation facility capital funding. So it's really, I'm in research mode to determine, are there organizations advocating for recreation capital funding or not, and or what does that look like? And also to look in the federal government's announcements. Recently, still don't have a lot of information on recreation funding, but my intent is to gather enough information for you to either move into advocacy or not, or to seek additional information. So the organization I talked to, a provincial organization that often works with municipalities for recreation capital funding, does not have a lot of information, but are also working on their own advocacy programs. So again, in light of not having all the information together, it's really premature to give you more detail. Just knowing that there's some effort into understanding what is going on with recreation funding for the next couple of weeks to report back.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, all in favor of the motion? Okay, carried. And we will move into council action control.
Mayor Barkley, I can state that there is a representative booked in mid-May in relation to AHS and ambulance services. So we're getting there.
Good job. Okay, I'll just have somebody make a motion that we accept the council resolution action control as information. Councillor Bates.
Yes, I'll move that we accept the action control for information.
Great, thank you. Any questions? No, all in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll go into 4.4.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I can lead in, and if there's any questions of the council, but the town of Innisfail was approached by the city of Red Deer to support their draft resolution to the AAM convention in the fall, sort of relating to their fleet management program. As per the recommended motion, if council considers this a fit for you, they're looking to have the federal, sorry. I'll go to my computer. Okay. So what they're asking AM to do is to advocate to the Government of Canada and the Minister to alter their funding programs. What the city has challenges, what they're doing is having challenges accessing the current programs due to the call volume on the current programs for green-related busing systems to have somewhere in the middle. They like to have clean diesel with natural gas combination. They're asking for AM to advocate, if they're allowed to have additional funding to the federal program to help with their cause of accessing fleet. So it's kind of general overview. The rest of the information is in the reports, but I'll leave it there, Mayor Barkley.
Sure, thank you. I'll have somebody make the motion, and then we could have some discussion if there is any. Councillor Bates.
I'll make the recommended motion. The council second the motion made by the City of Red Deer at their April 15th, 2024 meeting, that Alberta municipalities advocate to the Government of Canada and the Minister of Infrastructure to return to a funding program that accepts purchases of compressed natural gas and clean diesel buses until 2035, which allows municipalities to transition their fleets in an efficient and realistic manner.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions about this? No, all in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. And we'll move into 5.1 with Director Vickers and the tax bylaw adjustment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barkley. So the report you have before you here is just a cleanup to the tax bylaw that was passed at the last regular council meeting, or at the April 8th regular council meeting. With the passing of that bylaw, we did see an increase to our tax revenue in $130,356. At that time, council did make a motion to apply that overage to two specific projects. So this is just that budget adjustment to kind of formalize that. The first option is $100,000 to be transferred to the 2024 surface improvements capital project. And that was to cover the LGFF funding deficit of $100,000. and the remaining $30,356 to be transferred to the RCMP reserve. That is going to help cover any future retroactive costs related to a new collective bargaining agreement. I do just have the new updated accounts, which will flow through into our operating budget. Yeah, and I'll take any questions that council may have. I'm just looking for a motion to approve this budget adjustment.
All right, thank you. Please have someone make the recommended motion.
Mayor Barkley, I would make that motion that council approve the recommended budget adjustments.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? We went over this last week, but, okay, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bates.
Yeah, I really don't have a question, but I wanted to flag another one that, for the future, and that is, now that we've seen the government initiative last week with the water sharing, I think we should keep it in the back of our minds that we will likely sell less water this year, and there'll probably be a revenue shortfall in that account. So it's just something we should keep in the back of our minds. Thank you. And I don't object to this at all.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we will move into 5.2 with Director Vickers and the financials and surplus for 2024.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barkley. I do have before you the 2023 fourth quarter financials and allocation of the 2023 surplus. So we do, each year, administration presents quarterly financials for council to review and approve. The ones we have here for the fourth quarter of 2023, and we do account for January 1st all the way to December 31st, cumulative. We have reviewed the financial information being present, as well as we have had our audit finalized, as you just heard from our auditors. The 2023 budget was approved on December 12th, and we do believe this to be an accurate representation of our financials. So when we look at the revenue and expenses where we get our surplus, we look at our increased revenue areas. So we are seeing an overall increase of revenue in about $310,000, and that's coming from a number of different places. So the first one we want to look at is our investment revenue. That has actually increased by $266,000 in 2023 due to increased interest rates over and above what we budgeted. We also had an increased other revenue section of about $214,000. So one portion of that was the sale of our bus at an auction this year. When we do sell our assets, that isn't something that we normally put a budget line to it. And when we do sell it, it's just one of those increases in our budget each year. We also had some revenue towards an emergency storage pond in just under $95,000, so that was indicated in there as well. We saw some increased admission and membership fees of right around that $70,000 mark, and we did see that double up of our MSI operating of about $65,000. And when we look at our expenses, we are seeing a decrease of expenses by about $483,000. A big brunt of that came from our contracted and general services. That was under budget by $703,000. A couple of the main areas are decreased repairs and maintenance. We were under budget by about $74,000, as well as our decreased contracted services, just under that $317,000 we were under budget. The big one was our salaries and benefits. We were actually under budget by $371,000 in that area. We did have some staff turnover and some vacant positions, and that's where that overage comes from. As well as we did budget for some mortgage interest as well, and seeing as how we didn't take our loan out until December 15th, we actually didn't see any of that mortgage interest in 2023. So that freed up a lot of that money in our expenses. So that is where we're seeing our surplus. It is $794,106. And administration is asking it to be allocated to the following areas. So the first one, we're looking for some carryover projects. So we do have 5 carryover projects that we would like to carry over for $58,000. So the first one being the balance of the Community Safety Initiative. So it was a project that was started last year, and it is going to just carry over and finish up this year. We also have $10,000 in the downtown tactics, $10,000 for public art, $12,000 for men's partitions and fixtures at the Aquatic Center, as well as the camp house and shop building condition assessments. We do want to put a little bit more into the RCMP reserve as well. Again, their collective bargaining agreement expired March 31st of 2023. We do want to allocate a future back pay. We did get some updated numbers of 4%. So if we look at our 2023 RCMP rate, 4% of that should be $64,491. If we take away the amount that was just allocated from that tax bylaw of $30,356, we're seeing a balance of $34,135 that we would like to transfer in and hold for that future RCMP back pay amount. We're looking to allocate $30,000 towards the pedestrian safety review. So at the February 26th council meeting, we received a delegation from an Innisfil resident regarding pedestrian crossing safety. A motion was made at that meeting that directed administration to conduct a pedestrian safety assessment on main thoroughfares in Innisfil, and that motion was carried. A map of locations, which is not only attached to this report, and after a review of each of those intersections, the information, conclusions, and recommendations for each intersection shall be presented within a report to council. Each intersection shall have any immediate and ultimate recommendations summarized and outlined with figures, and the cost of that is $30,000. We're asking to allocate $45,000 towards the independent assessor. So to support our AUC application for the town solar farm, the minister will be appointing an independent assessor to review the application and supporting documentation. That an independent assessor will make a recommendation to the minister for approval, and the cost of that assessor of up to $45,000, that's the maximum that we could expect, must be borne by the municipality. We are looking to allocate $70,000 to go towards community safety. So maximizing the health, safety, and well-being of residents is one of council's priorities under the council's strategic plan. And to support this strategic plan, administration is asking council to allocate $70,000 from the 2023 surplus to be put towards community safety. Administration will complete a review of staffing levels in our Protective Services Department, both locally and regionally, and provide council with a business case associated with increasing Protective Services staffing levels. As you can see, there is another motion that we are asking a motion for council to direct us to give that formal direction. We are looking for an increase to our GIS asset management software. So you will see a new contract coming forward for them. The contract was up and due. We did do a tender out. It has come back. We are looking to stay with Catalyst for our GIS asset management software, but we are looking to upgrade 2 of the modules. So it's permit and licensing and request management. So the new modules will allow for online permit and license applications through a public-facing portal. It will also do better work order tracking, linked assets and location, as well as linked public complaints and service requests. So we do have a portion in our own budget for this year, which I think it was $32,000. We are needing an increase of $32,625 for this year to increase those 2 modules. One area is we did see 2 invoices that came in quite late from the vendor. They were invoices back from November that we just received in March, so we are asking those to be allocated out of the surplus. And then the balance of $500,746 to be put to the facility reserve. A budget adjustment will be presented at the future council, depending on whatever council decided here, just to formalize the accounts in the town's 2024 operating budget. We do see a 2023 end balance in the reserves of $15,792,902. So if you look at the reserve balance, you see that the land acquisition reserve is quite high right now. The balance of our loan that we took out is sitting in that reserve. So we'll be taking about 1.5 out of that reserve throughout this year to pay for the balance of the Southwest Industrial. And then we do just have some carryover projects listed there. Now, they may be functionally finished as a carryover project, but just financially, we have the project open as we wait for final invoices to come in and things like that, as well as some of our completed projects. Once the 2023 audited financials were approved, as after today, we will get a formalized copy put on our financial statements as well. Would you like to look through the summary budget amount, just to go through, see if anyone has any questions? So this is what I normally look at when we're looking at budget overages and underages. We kind of see this. It is a, Juanita, do you want to go to the other one that has it broken down by type? This is the one by department. This one's perfect, yeah. So we just looked through here. So property taxes, we do see a difference. Our budget was 11.8. We actually received 11.798, which is pretty close, which is pretty bang on. We can go through these if you have any cause or concern that comes out on any of them. We can go through them. Where do I want to go? We need, if you want to go to expenses and go down to transfer payments, down to 700 there. Just want to look at the transfer payments, specifically the school payments that we receive. So we do see a provincial school requisition, a separate school requisition, which is the Catholic school. We do see Parkland Foundation as well, which is the housing there here. So I just want to note that we do have the 2.8 and the 162,000 to the two different school requisitions. Now, we really just see one invoice that comes in from the government, and we pay that directly to the school district, and they disperse their money separately. So even though it looks like such a glaring difference, it just is the way it is, right? Like, we receive one bill, we pay the bill to the school board, and how they disperse it out. They disperse it out even though it looks like it's a big difference, right? We see 2.8 going to the public school board and only 162 going to the Catholic school board. It's not a real representation of how much money they do receive from the government to run their facility. Okay, you can see the mortgage interest there on the bottom was that $264,000, and we actually attributed nothing because we didn't have any of that expense yet this year. So, was there any, did anyone have any questions about anything on this list specifically?
Can you just remind us, or me, I guess, Director Vickers, utilities, electricity and gas, did we sign up for long-term plans with, I know Alberta Munis was talking about that 10-year plan at one point in time?
So we did just recently sign in for electricity service. I don't know the dates off the top of my head, I'd have to find it, but it did just start, was it this year or was it late 23? I think it was 24 that they started. Let me see if I can find that, yeah. I'll get the dates and I'll get back to you specifically, Mayor Barkley.
Okay. Then the other thing, can you just mention the emergency storage pond that hasn't been paid for, may not be used, how that plays into the budget and, or the financials, I should say?
Yes, Mayor Barkley. So we did send out an invoice for the emergency storage pond. When we do an invoice, it is realized on our financial statements that day as revenue, even though we have not received payment for that. So if through the discussion through us and that organization, we decide not to build that storage pond and we remove that invoice, we will have to see that negative impact on our budget whenever that happens, right? So we're receiving that revenue in 2023 financially on our financial statements, but if in 2024 we decide, well, we're not going to build that pond and we're going to cancel that invoice, we're going to see that negative amount in this year's finances. So we'll just have to remember that when we go to do the surplus next year, if it's too low, that's because there's this $100,000 that we're taking away from revenue now.
Okay, and I just want to point out the savings and the energy conservation measures. That was the installation of solar arrays on the various buildings, right? So it came in well under
Yes.
what we thought it was going to, so.
Yes, now the project is still currently open, Mayor Barkley, but
Okay.
I believe that a lot of the work has been completed. So it's just finalizing up any of those final invoices. And then I'm sure at some point we'll be bringing a formalized report regarding the
Okay.
energy conservation
Yeah,
measures that we
that's
took.
Good news. Good job. Any questions from anybody?
Mayor Barkley?
Yes.
Through to Director Vickers. I'm looking at the map with relative to the survey or the analysis that we're going to do relative to pedestrian safety. And I very much appreciated the delegation that we saw a couple of weeks ago. Totally support, completely support what this project will look like. But my question is, and I guess my request is it, and I know we've talked about this before, but we actually did have another group of residents ask us about this in the last year, and that was why it's not possible to have a crosswalk on at the Aspen Heights Way intersection. It's a kilometer from the Aspen Heights Way entrance to the 56th Street crosswalk. It's a kilometer. To get to a path, you have to cross the highway with no crosswalk. So you have one of our trails that comes up from Centennial Park. It comes through Aspen Heights, and then you get to a highway, and you have no safe way to proceed to the next level or the next leg of the trail. So I just wonder if it's not possible for us to put that on this assessment and take a look at it. We have citizens in Aspen Heights that have asked for that. We had a reason, or we didn't, but we decided not to, but I'd sure like to include it in this assessment if possible. Thanks.
Councillor Heisted?
Yeah, no, I would concur with that comment from Councillor Wing. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on this piece, but I would agree with it. And I do have some other suggestions following, approving this item. Thanks.
Do you want to talk about the other suggestions now so that they know, so that?
Sure. You bet. I was just going to mention in roundtable actually, because we're talking about traffic safety and some of the work that we're going to do in the future. I would see it prudent for us, when we're sitting down with some of our strategy sessions that we do have on I think, quarterly basis, and we check in with one another quite often. But I think it'd be good for us on a safety tour ourselves. So we're going on a bit of a field trip as a team and just looking at not only some of the facilities that we work with in the community and kind of get, it's always good to wrap our head around the good work that's going on with administration and council, but I also see that a safety tour would be beneficial for us and go into different areas of the community that we may or may not be in on a regular basis to see what are those pressure points. And I do believe there's a cost to the study itself. I think that we can bring value as citizens. So if we, it's kind of like the pool thing that we're going to have in June. It'd be good to hit the streets and check out what's going on in our own community. Thanks.
So do you mean like a walking tour?
Well, I'm not saying a 20-kilometer tour, but it may be jumping in the PACE bus and checking out our community. I think in each area of our community that we could see, we can identify risks to the community. Because sometimes you have people coming from outside of the community giving us an assessment, and sometimes they don't understand our own community with the busy times of the day, different functions that happen within our own area. So they can enhance our insight. I think we can be the experts as well.
Councillor Bates?
So my question is a little different. I'm looking at the allocations here and the major allocation to the facility reserve, and I guess the question I have is, I know part of our surplus is due to the interest on, no doubt, all the reserves, but and I know we can move stuff between reserves, but we seldom do. The question I have is whether or not all 500 should go there, because each of the other reserves, their money helped create it, and I'm guessing that if we really look at it carefully, there's one or more of the other reserves that might get tapped sooner than later, and they might need some, especially with inflation. And what really caught my eye was an article in the paper not that long ago of, I think it was Mountain View County giving a pumper truck to Sundre, and the amount of inflation that hit that one single unit was 56% in the last 3 years or something. So I'm sure, I don't want to, maybe we could break this up and because you've got a lot of others that probably are unquestioned, but I'm just wondering if we should put all of it there or whether or not we should task admin with looking at all the reserves and saying, where are we likely to be spending some money in the next 1 or 2 years, and has inflation hit them to where they need a little extra versus,
CO Becker?
like, I don't expect
Sorry,
us to do it now. I'm just bringing it up that I think, I know anything I'm buying the last 2 years is probably 20% more expensive now, so.
CO Becker?
Yeah, just a comment to Councillor Bates's comments, and if it differs from the director, please speak to it. Part of that analysis is reflective in this report. I think some reserves are unfunded according to your asset management plan. However, if council wishes to advance a project associated with the Aquatic Center, we feel this is the best fit at this given time. This is not a restricted reserve, so you have the ability to, based on administrative advice, you have the ability to move from this reserve based on immediate need.
So I don't, yeah, I wasn't looking at this chart, to be honest with you, and I don't have the expertise to say within your departments who's going to need what in the next couple of years. And again, I'm sure there's some things, like I'm guessing, fire, for instance, is probably gone crazy with inflation due to all the demand across the world and the country. That one's evident with that one that hit the paper, but I don't have that expertise or the if you guys have done that and yeah, I'm okay with it. If you feel that you've done that, it's just that we're not party to that, and so if you're telling me you've done that and the other reserves are going to be good for the next couple of years, then I'll accept that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hystad?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on Councillor Bates' comment. I'm perfectly fine with the allocation for now. I think that it's not restrictive and we have some flexibility there, but I don't disagree with you in many ways, Councillor Bates. I think it's just an opportunity for us to go back and check on what we need to pay for in the future. I do see the recreation needs as well as the pool needs as is on our radar in the next, especially year and a half. So I'm perfectly fine with the setup of this. Thanks.
CO Becker?
Mayor Barkley, to Councillor Hystad's comments earlier, I just want to make sure there's not expected action associated with your thoughts of a community safety tour. Sometimes council makes comments and it goes away, and then there's an expectation. Where are we at? Just want to make sure, is that an action item or is that just a comment?
I would like it to be an action item. I think we've had a few groups come in and talk about safety in our community. They talked about traffic safety. Councillor Wings mentioned Aspen Heights. We actually had a group just a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, talk about safety in the dog parks. I know I haven't mentioned it on the trail by the railway tracks for lighting in the past, and I think that it's incumbent on us to actually have an action as council and to look after these requests. And I know we're spending $30,000. Sometimes these reports in communities, you spend the money on a contractor that comes in, does a nice glossy report, and I'm not saying Innisfail does this and we shelf it, but it does happen out there. And I think it just puts a little more weight when we spend a half a day looking at our community, and not only on safety itself, but our facilities. It's a good reminder of our assets and what we need to do as community leaders. So that would be an action. CO Becker, if that makes sense. Do you need a motion? Okay, I'd like to make a motion that town council we do a tour of our community in each area of our 4 corners of Innisfail to look at our traffic safety. And that council take a half a day, dependent on everybody's schedule, to collaborate and make sure that we're doing our due diligence for our community. How's that? Sound like a damn politician.
Okay, we have a motion. There any discussion? I'm not going to support it because I'm not the safety expert, and I don't know what good it would do me to go around town for half a day to check out intersections. I'm out and about every day, so I would rather the safety experts do this and bring us back a report with traffic counts and all the, I don't even know what goes into the safety report, so I don't see the purpose in me going out there and doing that. Councillor Dunham?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I somewhat agree with Mayor Barkley. I'm out and about town all the time, and I'm not a safety expert. I think we get concerns brought to us. Our own council brings up comments that we hear within the community. I think I'd much rather just have a safety expert come back to us and then potentially us look at those issue areas and then work from there.
Councillor Bates?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we'd have to have some structure. I mean, you can't just say we're going to take some time and go. So I don't know how you create that structure, like to say we're going to spend, these are the 10 things we're going to look at or whatever. There needs to be some structure if we're going to do it. And I don't know how you, and how you create that, and how you create that structure. And maybe that's back to Councillor Dunham's comments that as they come up, if we address them, I'm not against going and looking. It would need some structure.
Can you tell us, CEO Becker, like the safety report, consult, like the $30,000, what does that entail exactly? And
I could defer that
I
to
know it's in the report, but
to your question, Mayor Barker. I put it to the director. I know there's some technical components of it, but Steve can comment on it.
Sure, to council. So what we asked for was, based on those 19 locations, the consultants to have a look at those geometrics. Just do like a desktop review at this stage. We don't want them surveying and giving us detailed information. We really were looking for higher level assessments of the intersections, and then as per Councillor Dunham, we'll identify the ones of highest risk based on their analysis, because we're using traffic from a previous report, traffic numbers. That's why those intersections got chose. We can definitely add, if there's ones that council feels that are missed based on those locations, please, let us know and we can make some adjustments. It just means that those intersections won't have traffic data per se, but we will work with the consultants to evaluate those intersections. So feel free to, if there's specific ones that you see are missed, let us know and we can maybe shuffle a couple intersections if we have to.
so I guess I would ask you, do you see value in us going out? And I'm just a little confused what we're looking for, I guess, when we...
I guess, if you like, I guess there's always good to have input, but I think I would agree with Councillor Dunham that, let's see what these reports are, and if the reports come back and they're not hitting what your expectations were, then maybe we need to say that we've missed the mark on it, but I think we'll see a bunch of suggestions how to improve the safety, and then we can kind of highlight it from there.
So they come back, Director Kennedy, and let's say 50th Street, so it's a little bit congested. We have a crosswalk at 4 Lane and Tim Hortons, and then we have another one fairly shortly thereafter. Is that the kind of thing they will look at and say, well, those are, too close together. We're now adding more congestion because we've got a new commercial building going up with drive-through. Would they come back and potentially say, we need to move this from here to here, or we need to remove one, or?
Yeah, I think they will. They'll definitely have that. come up with ideas like for lighting, like if
Okay.
there are suggestions of how would overhead traffic control affect the flow and the traffic of those areas. And that's a great point, like with the Starbucks now being there, the additional traffic potentially. Those are all things that we can, highlight into the consultants so they're aware of what's going to happen. And then how that kind of snowballs, because that's the risk with doing individual intersection improvements, is you don't know exactly how that affects all the other intersections. So this will take that global look at it.
Okay. Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, and I would agree with some of the comments Director Kennedy's talking about. Where I was getting at, and I really don't think my intent was structure and blowing 4 or 5 hours or anything like that. But I just look at our positions as looking at areas in our community that may be of an interest to improve, and that's why I put the motion forward. As to any other suggestions, it's kind of like get to know your community once again, and sometimes those are our roles. We do that on a day-to-day basis as well. So thanks for everybody's input.
No, thank you. Councillor Wing?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I appreciate it when people say, well, I've been there, or I do this, and I appreciate that everybody absolutely is around this community a lot, but we're not around the community as a group. So what I see is not the same as what somebody else sees and what someone else's concern might be. So I'm not sure if we need to do it before we get the report, but at some point in time when we start to consider, I believe, when we start to consider what the impact will be relative to how it all looks, and it might be actually after the report is done, before there's a decision around implementation. I don't think it would hurt us at all to just spend some time and observe those areas together. Like I said, I have a different perspective or a different perception of what traffic means. I live in an older part of Innisfail. I live on I hate to say this out loud because I'm afraid that karma is always looking, but we live on a quiet street. But I know that 2 blocks away from me, it's not a quiet street, and 2 blocks the other way, there's not a quiet street. So I don't know. At some point in time, I think we can look at a report on a piece of paper, or we can actually just go and spend some time, and maybe the time is actually, Councillor High said, maybe it's after the report's done.
Yeah, and I think that's what I wanted to get out of this discussion, was that even doing it after the report would be an opportune time. So I would agree with you.
Okay, do you want to make an amendment to the motion then to do this after the report is completed and deliver it to council? And
Do you want the amend to that we do a tour of the community following the report?
whatever you want.
Yeah, I would like to amend the motion that's saying that we, after the safety report, that we, as council, go around and check out the areas that were recommended improvements in our community. Does that sound good?
You got it. Councillor Bates?
Yeah, the only question I have is, and that was where I was coming from with the structure of, so we would look at these spots or whatever the primary ones that came out of the report, plus something else that you might just be aware of? Is that somehow we would list over and above? Or?
Yeah, I think that report's going to give us the data that some of you are looking for or asking for or hoping to get. But I do see that, what Councillor Wing is saying is sometimes it's, don't want to speak for Janice because she would get mad at me, but Councillor Wing, but it's good to look at other areas that you're checking out in our community. Following that report. How's that?
Councillor Maceros?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Through to Director Kennedy. As part of that report, they'll come up with a list of problem areas, and then do they also come up with solutions, potential solutions?
Councillor Mazzaro, yeah, they'll provide us with some options, both short-term, long-term options as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so we have a motion to go on a tour after the report is delivered. All in favor? Okay.
Mayor Barkley, I move that council accepts the 2023 fourth quarter financials as presented.
Okay, any questions about that? No? All in favor? Carried. Please have somebody make the second motion. Councillor Wing.
Mayor Barkley, I move that council approves the allocation of the 2023 surplus as follows: $34,135 to the RCMP reserve, $259,225 to the operating reserve, and $500,746 to the facility reserve.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. And last motion. Councillor Maceros.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I'll move that council directs administration to provide council with a business case associated with increasing protective services staffing levels.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, carried. We'll move on to 5.3 of the water conservation residential options.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. So there's been lots of talk about water conservation lately. So this report is specifically to the rebate options and potential new options that we could maybe implement for the residents of Innisfail. So during the January 22nd council meeting, administration did bring a report regarding what we currently have in place for water conservation measures. We did attach that report for you guys' review as well. At that meeting, council did direct administration to bring back a draft policy regarding water conservation and rebates to home improvements. So we did attach, created and did a draft policy on our current toilet rebate program. We prepared it and just attached it for your review. There is very minor changes to the current design plan. So the account limit change. So there will be a maximum of 4 toilet rebates per utility account per year. That's what it used to say. And it has been changed to rebates per property are limited to 4 toilets. The program design is as such that you must change out a high flush toilet to a low flush toilet. And chances are you're not buying high flush toilets from the store to install and then replacing with a low flush toilet later on. So we did want to cap it just at 4 toilets per user. As well, we did add a second option for submission to us, because nowadays a lot of times what's happening is you're hiring a plumber to do that. That plumber could potentially be taking that toilet away, and now you don't have that opportunity to take it to the transfer site. So if we have you take a picture before you change it out and once again after you change it out to show the 2 different toilets, we will accept that as a submission. So we did add that into the new policy. But on top of that, we did do a bunch of research to what other municipalities were doing for other types of water rebates as well, and we have those listed here. So the first one is a rain barrel rebate program. So we did used to have a rain barrel program in the past. We no longer offer those rain barrels, so we eliminated that program. What this would do, this would allow someone to purchase a rain barrel on their own, and then they would get a rebate back to us. All the rebates that we would be discussing here would be rebates back towards their utility account. That would be the process, right? We wouldn't be handing out cash and checks to people, but they would go against the utility account on here. So attached to the report, we did add the full listing. There was a middle column that had a bit more information that was just too big, so I left it in the attachment. So this one, the rain barrel, would have to be an example of minimum 189 liters, and then they would be granted, a $50 or $75 rebate. The next option could be mulch. So wood mulch as ground covering, as it reduces the need for watering and reduces soil erosion. We could do like 50% up to $75 to $200. So a demand hot water recirculating system. So a hot water recirculating system delivers hot water directly to the faucet when needed, and if it goes unused, it gets returned to the hot water heater. A recirculating pump is installed in the plumbing lines to create a loop that slowly and constantly circulates the water in the hot water pipes back to the water heater for reheating. When you open a faucet or turn on a shower, hot water is in those pipes, so you don't need to waste water down the drain waiting for that water to heat up. So this is saying, you know, a 50% rebate per system up to a maximum of $200 per system, as well as a household maximum of $200. Those are the examples that we've seen in other municipalities. There's an option for residential rainwater harvesting systems. So this would include below and above ground tank systems, pumps, rainwater harvesting filters, pipe connections, and spout modifications. It could be a rebate 50% up to a maximum of $500. If we could add drought-tolerant trees and plants, so eligible plants qualify for a rebate. The tree plant must be in the ground, you know, not putting into plant pots or something, you know, on your deck. And that could be, you know, up to $100 off, you know, 50% up to $100 off. Drought-tolerant ground cover, like this could be turf. So outdoor water can account for up to 50% of water use in the summer. Reducing or eliminating grass can reduce outdoor water usage. So rebate could be available for homes with or without existing landscaping when adding rocks, drought-tolerant ground cover, including micro-clover or lawn replacement blends, artificial turf, rubber mulch, or hardscapes. However, we would make some provisions like concrete slabs wouldn't apply or things like that. Certain miscellaneous appliances, so this is where the WaterSense certified toilet, water pressure reducer, an Energy SAR certified washing machine, dishwash, or water heaters. They would be a credit of $100 on the utility bill. In most municipalities, they did have a limitation of 1 credit per year. So you couldn't buy all new appliances and get $400 off on your bill. You could only do one a year. Any type of low-flow shower head, which is anything that uses no more than 2 gallons per minute. Those would be just a $5 rebate each. General air water saver controller for flow-through humidifier system. I'm not really sure what that is, but that's 50% up to $100. Even soaker hoses, so we could do a rebate provided for the purchase of soaker hoses that would be used in a flower or vegetable garden. And you know, some have limits of up to 2 per household, 50% of up to $50 of a purchase. There's even some opportunities for some commercial options. So plumbing fixtures, so this could be ultra low water urinals or high efficiency toilets. For example, some soil moisture sensors. So a soil moisture sensor measures soil moisture content in the active root zone on your property. A measurement is taken before each scheduled irrigation event, and the irrigation controller bypasses the scheduled run cycle if the soil moisture is above the certain threshold. So there's no dollar amount there. We'd have to do some research if that was one that we were interested in. Any type of food equipment, so a food steamer or air-cooled ice machine, or even HVAC equipment. So I did look, there's 2 great sites that in our research we found. So the town of Okotoks and the town of Cochrane have great water conservation rebate programs. So I did attach those in there for your guys' review. I just want to have a conversation with council to see which one, if any, all that we'd like to implement. Any one that council does look at implementing, we would have to take back and do a full accounting, develop a budget for this in a year, which could limit how many applications we take in a year. We might have to waitlist people depending on what it is. And we would build out a full policy and bring back based on whatever council decides here.
Okay, thank you, Director Vickers. Councilor Maceros.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Thank you for putting all those together. I like the variety because it gives everybody an opportunity to feel like they can contribute in some way. What I was wondering was if you have any kind of statistics on the return on investment for any of these related to how much water gets saved.
So Mayor Barkley through to Councilor Mazzaro. So unfortunately, we did just a high level look through. We didn't contact some of the municipalities to see if they had any data on whether or not this reduced water consumption and how that flowed through. We could do that as a further request if council needs some more backup.
Thanks. I think probably it's a better idea to get something out right away so people have an opportunity to get going on the program, but just curious. Thanks.
Another thing, Mayor Barkley and Council, that we did add in here is through our research, we did find some options to to conserve water, on that public education. And so we likely are going to work with communications and get some of this information on our website as a way to, like, on what a toilet and how much water a toilet can use, and you know, just how to check. On laundry, you know, only use washer for full loads, things like that. Shower, faucets and sinks, leaks. So just to give them some ideas on how to conserve water, what to do, how to check to see if you're wasting water, things like that. So over the next week or 2 weeks, I'll be working with communications to get some stuff out there, so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hystad?
Yeah, Director Vickers, I want to commend you for the work. The only question that puzzled me was having the picture of my old toilet when I got rid of my old toilet. So that's just, you're just saying that's just maybe part of the rule, you know? Or,
So Mayor Barkley through to Councillor Hystad. So one of the common complaints we had from our current toilet rebate program is that the plumber took the toilet away.
Yeah.
So they weren't able to take, so what happens is you're supposed to take your current toilet, or your old toilet, to the transfer station, and the
then
he signs
it off. Okay, now I got it.
So now, if the plumber does that, all we're asking is you just to have pictures, and then we'll take the picture.
All right, I was listening, but I was like, what the heck? So, okay, thank you.
So it is a common complaint right now because, yeah, so.
Councillor Bates?
So the question I have is, I think I heard you say that many of these, especially the ones that we don't fully understand, that you would need to go back and look at and project the cost and figure out to present to us, so we wouldn't be jumping on some of these. Like, obviously, we know a low-flow toilet and a rain barrel are great things, but we wouldn't be, until you did that research, looking at whatever food equipment is and HVAC, where people might just come and get their nice rebate every time they upgrade or whatever.
Yeah, Mayor Barkley through to Councillor Bates, what we would do is, based on the conversation here, whichever ones council wishes to explore, we would create a budget for each one of those. Like right now, we don't know how many rain barrels you want us to sell, so maybe is it $1,000 for that, just that portion of the rebate? And then we would have to present that to you, council, for you to approve inside a budget year, right? So before we did all that extra work, we wanted to make sure that the options were appropriate for what you guys wished.
And the rain barrel, just to use that one as an example, it would be a rebate rather than us selling them, is that?
That's correct. So
And
you
so
would buy it from co-op or wherever you would buy it.
So depending on what they paid is why the 50 to 75?
Well, no,
or-
we would set a set rate,
Okay.
a set price, whether that's $50 or $75 or that was just the example of what we've seen out there.
So I still don't have a really good feel, because I heard Councillor Macero say, you know, it's important that we get going on this, but at the same time, some of these we wouldn't push the go button until we know what we're doing. So maybe you need to almost list back to us which ones we do have a handle on and could push kind of the go button. I don't know.
So, Director Vickers, I think there's some we could push the go button on. So the rain barrel rebate, I would like to, but I would like you to find out from local suppliers if they have the rain barrels, how much they are, even landscapers, companies, but I don't know if we can have a caveat that those rain barrels, if people want a rebate, they need to be bought local.
I'm not sure. That's definitely something we could look at, Mayor Barkley, is that would be in the policy design, right?
Yeah, and also, I don't know, that I know there's mulch already being given away, right?
We did give away.
Is it all gone? Is it, or? Yeah, okay. So I don't know about that. That would be something you'd have to look into. I think the residential rainwater harvesting system, again, you'd have to collect some more information about the cost on that from somebody, but I'm thinking there's a lot of people who may not have the wherewithal or the tools to put together a rainwater harvesting system and the eaves troughs and everything that downspouts that go along with that. I think we're going to see a lot of interest in drought-tolerant ground cover, whether you're overseeding with clover, micro clover, or new builds with maybe something other than green grass, Kentucky blue. Tolerant trees and plants, I think incentives are good, but low-flow shower heads are easy. And other than that, I mean, to me, that's kind of a list that we could do fairly quickly, and the rest of it, I think, would take some time or maybe be implemented another year. And, you know, I don't even really understand. I mean, I hear the drought all the time, and now there's these agreements in place, but to me, they're non-binding agreements, and, you know, what are we supposed to be reducing? I mean, we talked about that before. What is that level that we're supposed to reduce from? Is that last year's usage? Is it 5 years average usage? So I think there's a lot of details that we're not really clear about, or that I'm not clear about anyways. But I think anytime we can incentivize people to do the right thing, that's great. And
Is council interested at looking at any of the commercial opportunities right now, or just move forward with the residential right away?
I think commercial is important, like the plumbing fixtures, and I don't know if there's still programs out there through other levels of government where there's some rebates available anymore, but certainly was at one time. Might be all used up, Councillor Bates.
Well, I think I personally, to vote to spend money, I would need to know what that is. Like, what is the food equipment?
So it's a connectionless food steamer or an air-cooled ice machine.
Okay. That's those two things that are in there. And
But I think for now
HVAC, is it an efficiency level or a non-water usage? Yeah, I don't know what.
But I think for now, we're kind of picking out some items that you will go research and then bring back to us, right?
Yeah, so for the plumbing fixtures, for the commercial opportunities, some examples are ultra-low water urinals and high-efficiency toilets. So we would pick out, like how it's Energy Star certified dishwasher, it would be something similar like that for whichever type of urinal or high-efficiency toilet they would have, right?
I would personally like to stay away from some of the bigger items this year, just because
Yeah, this is a
we've
first
already done
year.
the budget and see how the rest of it goes, but it's up to what everybody else wants.
So I can pick those out and we'll take it back. We'll create a program for it. We will have to put some type of limitation on each individual line and have a budget that people would apply for and would get approved internally, right? And there could be a limit, right? Even if rain barrels, if we put an internal budget of $1,000 and we say 25 people can buy rain barrels, and then after that they're on a wait list for next year, or do you want no budget for these items, or?
I don't know, I think that's something you'll need to figure out and bring back to us, and I couldn't say.
Was there anything on here that you guys were thinking that is not on here, that maybe we didn't see?
I don't know, I think just the education portion is really important, and even having a water education day someday, but that's a lot of work, but
I have a couple. One, I think we should look at our own men's washroom here in the front office and just look at the water conservation that isn't in there because there are no urinals. I've had people ask me for years about, if they ever built a house, they would love to have excuse me, a separate gray water tank where they would collect their shower and their sink and bathtub and use it to irrigate with. I realize that would have an implication of what didn't go back to the river, but it's something to research, I think. And yeah, those two would be something to research that shouldn't be connected to this. Keep them separate.
Councillor Wing?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Yeah, I'd like to see certainly some numbers come back, but I'd like to see it kind of organized in two ways. I'd like to be able to say, here are some short-term, really quick things that we can do as a community to help us right now, immediately, because we're hearing, you hear out of both ears all different things about whether we have a drought or not, but these are things that, like the rain barrel and the mulch, the soaker hoses, those kinds of, the low flow shower head. But then I think we need to develop out a strategy then that talks about conservation and economics at a different level. So we can say to people, by implementing some of these tools and some of these measures, you can actually cut your consumption, cut your water bill, cut your sewer bill. And I know that's hard because we rely on that revenue as well. But truly, as Councillor Bates had said, with that gray water tank for new houses, people are looking for ways to, yes, conserve, but they're also looking for ways to save money. So I think we've got two sort of different value propositions in front of us here, but I'd sure like to see something that we could implement quickly, that people could understand, they could buy into easily, and then have a longer strategy around how they can landscape appropriately and how they can buy appliances appropriately and that kind of thing.
I think you'll find Director Vickers at Okotoks has a lot of that information on reduction and, yeah. Yeah, so,
I think it was pretty, I took a look at both Okotoks and Cochrane. It's pretty obvious Okotoks has been more desperate to
well, they've been at it for 20
to
years.
save water, and that's good. And it's education too. Like something as simple as a soaker hose, it can be really good or it can be really bad. If you turn the pressure up on a windy day like today, it's all going to leave. You've seen those cheap ones that shoot up about 3 feet in the air, and you could take an old hose and drill holes in it and you'll do better because it's all staying down there in the grass. So I don't know how you, yeah, it's so easy to make a mistake too.
Okay, so we'll just have somebody make a motion that we accept the report as information. Councillor Maceros?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I'd like to move that council provide direction to administration on water conservation rebate options and accepts this report as information.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All in favor? Okay, thank you for all your work on that. And we'll move into 6.1, sorry, I don't have my glasses on, 6.1, and FCSS, and welcome Manager Mackenzie.
Awesome. So just here to request a decision regarding the FCSS 2024 funding based on the recommendations of the FCSS Advisory Board. So annually, FCSS Advisory Board reviews grant applications from local organizations to support preventative social programming within the Innisfil community. The FCSS Board met this year on April 10th to determine recommendations for the distribution of the 2024 FCSS grant funding in the amount of $105,000. The FCSS Advisory Board is recommending the distribution of the grant as per the enclosed chart to the following organizations. So Chinook's Edge School Division Family School Wellness Program, which provides in-school based early intervention in the areas of social emotional well-being, resilience, and mental health. The program is available in all 3 of the Innisfil public schools and supports children and their families 0 to 18. And the program provides 3 full-time staff in each of those schools. Chinook's Edge School Division Youth Empowerment and Support Program, which is known as the YES program, which provides social emotional learning programs to promote mental health and wellness through universal and targeted programs for all students kindergarten to grade 8. And then the Innisfil Seniors Drop-In Society for program coordinator wages to support the ongoing facilitation of programs and activities at the Seniors Drop-In Center. As far as service level impacts, it is a minimal impact to current FCSS staffing. Funding agreements will be created. We liaise with the funded agencies and monitor reporting requirements as per the administration of the FCSS funding program. And so in 2024, the operating budget has $129,000 allocated for grants to local agencies and organizations to support preventative social programming in our community. These FCSS Advisory Board recommendations would leave a remaining $24,000 to be allocated later in 2024. So the breakdown of that currently looks like Chinook's Edge School Division Family School Wellness receiving $60,000 in funding, the Chinook's Edge School Division YES program receiving $25,000 in funding, and the Seniors Drop-In Society receiving $20,000 in funding, which would reach that $105,000.
All right, thank you. Can I please have someone make the recommended motion? Councillor Wing.
Mayor Barkley, I would move that council accept funding recommendations to allocate 2024 FCSS external grant funding to Chinook's Edge School Division Family School Wellness Program and Youth Empowerment and Support YES Program and Innisfail Senior Drop-In Society for a total disbursement of $105,000 as per the recommendations put forward by the FCSS Advisory Board.
Thank you. Did you have a lot of applications?
The three that you see are the three
that
that
it?
were there.
Okay,
Yes, so
interesting.
it is
Okay.
something that at a board level, we had the conversation, looking at the possibility of a different grant application for grants that are, or organizations that are looking for less than $10,000. The way the process is set up currently, it is an onerous process. A lot of that is as a result of what we require to report back to the province. But trying to figure out a way that we can streamline that for those organizations that are looking for less dollars. Because from a staffing standpoint, it is a huge ask for some of these organizations or nonprofit organizations. So looking at what that could look like in the future is definitely the hope for that remaining 24,000. We were surprised not to see one from the Catholic school. But the other organizations were either small dollar value or victim services, which is currently in a bit of a state of flux.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No? All in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. Okay, what's that noise? Somebody's phone is buzzing, yeah, okay. We'll move on to 7.1, correspondence and information. The Seniors Week declaration, CEO Becker, did you want that done now or wait until we get closer to June, or?
Anytime.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Bates.
I move that we declare June 3 to 9, 2024 to be Seniors Week, so the mayor can have her garden party.
It's already booked. Okay, any questions? All in favor? Okay, thank you. Then I'll just have somebody make a motion that we accept the correspondence as information, please. Councillor Dunham.
Mayor Barkley, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried.
Yeah, I'm just going to move my report as on the screen. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Dunham, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I was remiss in submitting mine, so I'll just run over mine quick, and I will email everyone as the EDA conference had quite a lot of information in it, but unfortunately I just received my book back this morning. April 10th to 12th, I attended the EDA conference with Mayor Barkley and Councillor Mazzaros. Several different good breakout sessions, one in particular with the gentleman by the name of Andrew Button from Mashup Labs, and it was called Practical Strategies for Getting Untapped Entrepreneurial Talent Off the Sidelines. Mayor Barkley made arrangements, and we actually met up with Mr. Button after the afternoon sessions were complete, and I'm hoping that in the near future we'll be making a motion to potentially, in the future, to talk about some further engagement with Mr. Button. As well, on April 13th, I attended the Innisfail Library 120th celebration and the art opening at the Camp House. My thing is not scrolling here, my apologies. April 16th, I attended the Red Deer Chamber Luncheon. April 17th, Rotary Dinner, and then on April 19th, the Community Awards.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to Councillor Mazzaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. My apologies also for not getting my report in. Last week was the Red Deer Chamber Luncheon, a couple of community events, the Boob Tour, and the Friendship Dinner. We had our chamber meeting on Thursday night, and this week we're going to be, I'm part of the interview committee. We're interviewing 2 candidates for the position of office administrator. I went to the community awards on Friday night, which was excellent, and that's about it. Oh, and I'm away Thursday and Friday, so I'm not attending the function on Friday night this week.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. So last week I attended the Red Deer Chamber luncheon with all of you, the Parkland Library Executive Committee meeting in Lacombe on Thursday, and then the Innisfil Community Awards event. So certainly congratulations to all the nominees and the outstanding winners. Tomorrow evening I'll be attending the Innisfil Public Library Board meeting, and this Thursday I am attending a full-day virtual crime prevention through environmental design, so CEPTED conference, as well as the Safety Lab event. I just have a question though. I'm wondering, is there going to be a spring green and clean program this year, and do we have a date set for that? Okay. Okay, the one that's online is for, says 2023 on it. Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Bates.
Yeah, so, excuse me, my report is in there. I guess there it is. I won't speak to all those things. The Central Alberta Regional Waste Management Commission, I'll speak to that for a bit. That's the solid waste one that we meet twice a year. There was a bit of an additional task that we're going to do there now. They had looked at all the various testing wells that they had, and somebody had brought up that there was no known level of each well. So they undertook the task to determine the level of each well, and found out that one of the wells was at a different level than the others that they were, so that would indicate that you're not testing the same water. So now we'll have one more well to test in the future, which will probably result in an annual increase of $3,000 to $4,000. It just gives you the feeling of how these things, and this is a little tiny landfill that was run for 4 or 5 years. We need to do this now through 2028, and then I think we get to apply for a 2 or 3 year extension, and that could be the end of it. Heavy emphasis on the word could. The April 18th Alberta Government Drought Town Hall, I did not attend. I actually got an email that morning saying that it had been shortened. I did not get the telephone call, and got having so much fun in my income tax that I missed it, to be honest with you. But we all saw the results, I'm sure, the next day with the announcements of the water sharing agreements, which, yeah, they're guidelines at the most. But I'm sure most communities will be undertaking water sharing management plans, and we'll all share water, just like we did with the power in the winter. Ongoing for us, I see a kind of a blend between the commission and our town. I mean, we're already going to start working on the things that Director Vickers brought forth today, and the next juncture in time, May 8th, is the next water commission meeting, and I expect to see some results from the technical committee at that point that'll probably help guide us with our ongoing efforts to create the drought management plan. Yeah, I don't think I have. I do have I found an interesting article on the weekend, and I cannot find it electronically. It was in the Red Deer Advocate, and it was Lacombe News, but it actually outlined the 5 major licensed users on the Red Deer River in this area, and our commission is number 5. I'll copy it and get it to all of council, and a copy to the CAO, and yeah, we're number 5. Yeah, so I missed the community awards. I knew I was gonna, and I'll look forward to catching up in the paper on all of the winners. And I'm sorry that I missed that, but I attended that fundraiser in Calgary, and it was kind of beyond belief. They had Kelly Rudy and Rick Ball from the Flames, because they don't need to work right now, and It was a huge event. We got an email the next day, they raised $105,000. The only downside to me was it was so big that, and noisy, that I didn't get to hear my grandson a whole lot. Yeah. The other thing I noticed, I was in the middle of Garage Sale Alley on the weekend, and you almost needed a crosswalk to get across the street. I mean, it was busy. And the people that had the garage sales were just in heaven, because they were getting people from Airdrie and all over the place. It was really good. I also made 2 quick visits down to the ball hockey, and I think I saw the final A event, and if that was it, I think it was at 5 o'clock. That was the winners and losers that were moving to the right on the chart. But there was 3 ladies on that team that won, and they really impressed. Believe me, they were holding their own with any of the guys, big or small. That's it.
Well, you should have come at 3. You could have watched me play, Gavin. Yeah, well, I didn't know. It was a long story, but well, Brenda Beagle and I, yeah, it was fun. Anyway, that's a whole other story. First of all, while Manager McKenzie's still here, I just want to say thank you so much for the community awards on Friday night. It was absolutely wonderful. Very nice evening. And also, whomever does the garage sale, organized all that. Are you pointing at? Ken. I'm just Ken. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, it was fantastic. And to have over 100 entries, it created a real buzz in town. And it was so busy, and restaurants and pubs were busy, and it was just really good. So thanks everybody for all your hard work on that, and huge success. So my report's in there. I did have a wastewater commission meeting on Friday. Don't have much about that, but I will do that in the next report and catch everybody up on what's going on with that. So we'll go into open mic. Does Mr. King have anything he would like to say? You're welcome.
I'm not sure if everyone's aware yet. We had an incredibly successful boob tour last week. Thank you to the community and everyone else. I think Trish said it'll be slightly over 17,000 that we'll be able to pass on to Central Alberta Cancer Society. I don't know what the actual date for next year is, but it is booked. And one question through to Director Kennedy. Question. My street was swept last week. Will the town be putting out street sweeping signs ahead of time so people move their vehicles?
Street sweeping signs are dependent on the streets. Typically, we haven't been, but if we are on streets that we find that people aren't moving or we're not getting in the right time, we will start to add the signage, but typically we don't add signage.
And thanks, Ron, to you and your family that continue to host the boob tour. It was a great evening, and
everything that we did or needed that evening was donated by the community, businesses, individuals. We had absolutely no expense, and that's reflective of the community we live in.
absolutely.
Yep. Just put your hand out and they ask how many. We had close to 40 silent auction items and a few live auction items. Thank goodness we got Doug Boss and Roger Malcolm fighting over those.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. Thank you. We'll move into upcoming events. Let's have a motion to accept the upcoming events as information. Councillor Dunham,
Mayor McBoy will make that motion.
all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
There's a couple of,
You can email. Can you email Juanita? Let her know.
the MDP is not happening tomorrow, and the Water Commission's back on May the 8th. Those are the two.
Okay. Can you just email Juanita? Okay, Councillor Bates, can you email Juanita and give her that information?
Sure.
Okay. It's just easier for her. She's busy writing so many things. And then we'll have a motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Hystad,
Motion to go in camera.
thanks. All in favor? Carried.